Hey, what's up guys, it's Oakley, and we are going to be covering the various Legendary Lord character traits, or unlockables, that CA released. So it's going to be Empire, Dwarves, and Greenskins. We're going to start with Emperor KARL FRANZ, and this is just a selection of the total that are available to everyone. So for instance, KARL FRANZ, one of his unlocks is Deathclaw. That's to get his mount. Deadly Onslaught, which gives him charge bonus, melee attack, and reduced fatigue. So KARL FRANZ, you'll see, is very much about inspiring and giving buffs to his troops. Stand your ground there, gives you increased attack, defense, and morale stats. Irrepressible means that if he, gets wounded on the campaign map, he comes back quicker. Leader of Men allows you to inspire units with your radius by being larger. And Heroic Leader is actually pretty cool. It allows you to basically inspire a unit anywhere on the battlefield. So this is kind of an interesting character. He's going to be tanky in combat with his unlocks and all that, but also very much about leading the charge and rallying your forces. So you may see him bouncing around the battlefield, kind of giving buffs and rallying, going back and forth between the battle lines, kind of mending or tending to the battle lines, and then even committing himself to the fray. And that's what you'll notice from these various different character traits, is that each one plays differently. So as opposed to previous Total Wars where, main generals didn't really stick out too much, now you start to see the differentiation. So just case in point, let's go over BALTHASAR. So his first is going to be Evasion. It allows him to get increased speed and acceleration. Not sure how important that is. Arcane Conduit means that wherever he is, there's going to be just generally more winds of magic. Now this could work against you. Depends who you're fighting against, but could be very powerful if you stock your army up with a bunch of spellcasters. Staff of Volans basically is a staff that you can unlock. So in here, you can get mounts, but you can also get pieces of equipment. Plague of Rust. Remember that BALTHASAR knows the magical lore of metal. So in this case, he turns the enemy armor to rust, lowering its resistance. So a debuff, which is sweet. Mighty Force. BALTHASAR applies his mastery of the magical lore of metal to increase the armor of war machines in his army. That's awesome. Get some really nice steam tanks going on with BALTHASAR. And then Earthing. Years of training and proper stance significantly reduces the chance of BALTHASAR's spells miscasting. That's the first reference I've actually seen to miscasting. Be curious to see how that works and how often it occurs. But good to also see that there's a counter to it, nonetheless. So I think that's really cool. BALTHASAR there, you can see obviously playing more to his magical abilities. Not too much in the way of buffing his friendly units, more towards himself dealing magic and making that other magical users will be more powerful. And of course the Empire is going to have a lot more future Legendary Lords, but I really like how each seems to have its own flavor. THORGRIM GRUDGEBEARER, moving on to the Dwarves here. So Obdurate, the first one means that anyone under his command is going to be more loyal to him. I'm not sure if that's just a general term that they threw in to represent higher morale, or if loyalty of lords under you is going to be an important game mechanic. We haven't really heard about that. High King is something that he can unlock, and basically it just means he has increased charge and attack bonuses, immunity to psychological effects. So this guy is going to be a tank in combat. Now these next couple ones are about buffing kind of your troops in your army. So the Wall Breaker means you're much better in attacking enemy defenses. Defensive Expert means that you can hold out much longer within sieges. Inquiring Mind means that you have buffs to your technology. And then Thwapa right there is basically giving more armor to your gyrocopters. So the dwarfs already we know are going to be super tanky, and it seems like Thorgrim is going to give you the ability to make the dwarves that much tankier. With the Defensive Expert holding up forever in your Dwarven Karaks. That seems kind of crazy. Wallbreaker, I'd be interested to see how what the Dwarven kind of siege equipment looks like. We haven't seen much of it. I am assuming they're going to have battering ram and things like that, perhaps even for other equipment that we haven't seen just yet for Wallbreakers and whatnot. And then some of the armor that you can see that he gives his gyrocopters is kind of like what we saw for BALTHASAR. Now, UNGRIM IRONFIST. Slayer King is his first perk here, and again, this is just some of his total list, but the first one basically allows increased melee attack for other Slayers. Dragon Slayer means that he has no fear even against the largest adversaries, and other units get increased damage against large units. Deathblow, his enthusiasm for battle grants UNGRIM increased attack strength and armor piercing, providing him health, and providing his health is high enough. Weird. So something that's dependent on where your health is. That's kind of cool. Miner's Instinct there, you can see, basically allows him to tunnel, and when he does so, it decreases the chance of intercepting him while he goes under. Also, Lord of the Deeps means that your morale while being underground is going to be improved. So this guy being good for attack and then also maneuvering underground and then alert means that you're much less likely to be ambushed. So this guy, interesting, all about kind of fielding forces and giving more to their ability to move around the campaign map, whereas THORGRIM was very much about holding your ground with the things we saw about like increased duration of, withholding in a siege. So cool. One is more defensive, one is more offensive, but they still have a mix of the two. Excuse me. And you don't necessarily get all of these skills. Again, you have the choice of progressing along one way. There are going to be 30 levels for the Legendary Lord characters, so it's up to you to choose which way you're going to cater your hero. GRIMGOR for the greenskins here. Blood-forged armor. This is something that you have to unlock. So you basically put points into getting this. You unlock the quest chain, and then if you complete the quest chain, then you're rewarded with the legendary armor. I'm excited to see how this stuff looks visually when it gets donned by your character. Could be cool. And then devastating charges. I mean, a lot of these are kind of self-explanatory. Anyway, it seems like he has an area effect as he charges. The Immortals basically gives him more dudes for his bodyguard. And I like how there's a couple here. One that's called Wah, which is basically, I'm just going to read it to you verbatim. GRIMGOR and all around him surge towards the foe in a tidal wave of violence, gaining increased melee attack and morale. So all about wave attacks, breaking up against the enemy. And then the Wah path basically means that on the campaign map, you're more likely to get into Wah stance. So GRIMGOR definitely about summoning huge tides of units and throwing those tides against, the Empire and break against them with huge waves. Raider, Looter, and Ravager means you get increased income from your warfare, which is going to be key to sustaining combat abroad. It's all about raiding stances and sacking units. So GRIMGOR definitely about taking this fight to your offensive, not only in terms of the armies penetrating enemy territory, but also on the battlefield himself, giving buffs to attack and things like that. We're going to see that AZHAG, however, a little bit different because he has, for example, Skull Muncher, so he can ride above the troops in his Wyvern, get on with it. Basically gives increased charge damage for those around him, which is similar to GRIMGOR, but here it starts to get different. So the Purple Zun of Xerus summon a colossal deadly orb of purple-edged darkness. This is so cool. The next one, Doom and Darkness. This hex summons the spirits of the departed, massively reducing enemy morale. Spirit Leech leeches the spirit of a single enemy unit through Tainted Sorcerer. So I'm wondering if that means you can steal health from an enemy hero and take it and put it back to yourself. If that's the case, this guy's going to be very important to shuffle him around the battlefield and really, unleash magic to turn the tide in certain areas. Doom and Darkness, pair that with a massive charge from your troops and, do Doom and Darkness, and the enemy is going to collapse upon that area. So cool that he's very aggressive, but in the sense of magic. And then Lightning Strike at the end there allows him to attack basically a group, a series of armies. But you can pinpoint just one enemy force and they have to fight without reinforcements. So it's like what you had with night battles in the past. And that's going to be a very, very helpful thing to have, especially since I assume you will be able to bring your allies. Man, that could be super, super powerful, ganging up one at a time against enemy armies, just knocking them out. So overall, I'm very, very excited about what they've announced. This is just a small selection of all the legendary skills. Obviously, we have more to see when it comes to the vampire counts and also the Chaos Lords. That's going to be interesting. But so far, I think it's very exciting. Lots of cool depth and detail. Anyways, that's it for now. See you in the next one. Peace out.